this. We've been talking about breast cancer this morning.
Yes.
So now there's one question I did want to ask you. I have known females who have had breast cancer.
Yes.
And I think everybody is in that same boat. But I realise that males get breast cancer too, but I've never known one.
Yeah, the stats are very, very low. So it's less than 1%. So in 2017, they're estimating 17,800 new cases this year for women.
What? Yes.
But only about 160 new cases for men.
Now, what would the reason be for that?
Well, part of it is that women have more breast tissue than men, so that's going to be part of the equation. I sort of suspect it's going to be a whole bunch of things. Have you heard of endocrine disruptors? Like, does that term ring a bell at all?
They're not a biker gang, right?
Well, that would be a good name for a rock band too, wouldn't it? The endocrine disruptors. Yeah, so basically they're things in our food supply, things in our lifestyle, things in our environment that attach to the cell walls, and then they stop the body from being able to deal with estrogens, testosterones and hormones. So they're things like plastics, pesticides, herbicides. They're things like stress hormones, but really it is the things that are in our food. Like, this is why we should wash our fruit and veggies when we get them home from the shop.
For all the sprays.
Absolutely, because those things are very well known to do it. Basically what happens, the more toxic, everyone has got a magical level where their body can cope with things.
Right.
And it's different with everyone, and it does come down to our genes, what genes for toxins are working and what aren't. And also where we've lived in our lives, what we've done in order to help. Some people magically detox every day. So they might get up and they might start the day with ginger and lemon tea, or they might start the day with, they might accidentally do something in their life that happens to keep genetic pathways working so that we're the least toxic possible.
Right. Yep.
These toxins can bind to the cell receptors. Every cell in your body has got 500,000 receptor sites.
Okay.
So that's a lot of receptor sites. And these receptor sites are for things like nutrients, essential fatty acids, magnesium, zincs. They're for things like dopamine and serotonin. They're for things like insulin and, so all of the things that feed us nutrients and hormones and all sorts of things, there's receptors on our cell membranes. Now, something like estrogen, for example, if we wrap everything in Glad wrap, if we eat, because that is a well-known, so BPA is one of the ones that people might have seen. If you're buying a plastic container from Coles or Woolies, it might say BPA free. Right. If you're buying a bottle for the child, most of them will be BPA free. So BPA is bisphenol A. It just happens to be one of the endocrine disruptors that's had a lot of study done. They know that it binds to the receptor site on the cell. So then that cell that's expecting estrogen has got BPA, but it neutralizes that receptor site. Wow. So then you can have estrogen in your body that's looking for a receptor site. It can't go into the cell. So what's it going to do? It then ends up in your liver. And then the liver goes, oh, hang on, I've got some estrogen here. So the liver tries to deal with it.
Wow.
And this is where the more days that we have PMT for, and that's why it's such a good symptom for women to get, because the more PMT you have, the higher risk you have of breast cancer, cervical cancer, uterine cancer. So it's a sign that our liver isn't dealing with our hormones well. If our liver isn't dealing with our hormones, we're in a higher risk factor for things like breast cancer.
Well, I like the idea of those containers. BPA, is it?
Yeah, bisphenol A.
So everyone should keep an eye out if they're going to buy a new drink bottle.
Yeah.
Or
Absolutely, or buying glass when you can instead of plastic. Doing, like, even just recently at the markets, I bought these. They were made out of beeswax, and it's basically like a covering for containers so that you don't have plastic in it.
Right, yes.
So, I mean, they're expensive. They're like 40 for four of them or something, but they get reused for years. So I'm loving it.
Oh,
so it's about keeping things not in plastic when you can. It's about, also, when you buy, say, tin tomatoes, and then you open up the tin tomato. Just say you buy organic tin tomatoes. Let's go one step further. So you get home, you open up the can, and on the inside of the can is that white lining. That white lining generally has BPA in it. So there you are. You've bought your organic tomatoes.
Right.
They've put them into a container that's filled with that plastic.
Right.
And then the acidity of the tomato leaches that BPA into your lovely organic tomatoes,
Ooh.
which can make it not so fantastically
good.
organic.
Well, listen, you mentioned Glad Wrap
Yes.
before. Now, is that a bad thing to wrap things
Well,
in
once
Glad Wrap,
again, I don't have Glad Wrap in the house. It's not something I do, but I've been aware of this forever.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to put it over food, I would never let the Glad Wrap touch the food. I would get a container that's higher than the food, put the food down the bottom, and then put the Glad Wrap over the top so it's not actually touching the food.
Yeah, right.
But then you imagine things like cheese. You get the cheese home from the supermarket, you do your slices of cheese, and then you wrap the plastic back around the cheese, pop it into the container and pop it back in the fridge. So plastics are such a huge part of our lives and our world. It takes quite a bit of an effort to start thinking along those lines.
Why doesn't someone invent something so we can get rid of plastic altogether?
Well,
I have no love for plastic whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, I think if we're buying BPA free, but BPA is just one of the endocrine disruptors. Yeah. Just about all plastics will have something in them, but you just have to do the safest you can. Glass is safe. But as a world, you know, there's the whole shortage of glass thing in the world because we're running out of sand or something. Because there's only a particular type of sand that makes glass. So that's another challenge, you know, environmentally as well. And I think, I don't know.
Someone will come up with something.
Someone will come up with something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's about choosing the safest you have at the time, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Oh yes, there's always people out there thinking now, hang on, we're running short of this or time for an investment. A lot of smart people out there, they concentrate their lives on doing things
That's
like
right.
this.
And because breast cancer is driven by the estrogen, so I'm thinking the endocrine disruptors there, but then the insulin is the other one that I mentioned before, that oncologist who, she was just getting sick to death of having people come, sorry, wrong terminology talking about breast cancer, but she was seeing her clients coming in younger and younger and younger and younger and younger. So insulin was one of the things that she found was a massive driver of the increase in breast cancer. But the other thing she started to do when she did the biopsies, instead of just looking for cancer, she started looking for what else was in that tissue. Right. And she found personal care products. So they are also big endocrine disruptors. Wow. Things like the hair dyes, things like our makeups and lipsticks, and things like our shampoos and conditioners and body washes. So and once again, if something says fragrance, fragrances aren't natural. It's about looking and trying to find the healthiest options that you have available that's within your budget, because not everyone can do organic everything, not everyone, but we can choose the best we can within our budget. And I think anything that we can do all helps.
Is there an age group where breast cancer can start? I mean, is there an age group that, are you okay when you're really young, like a young girl or something like that, or not?
One of my clients who had a daughter die of breast cancer was 24 years old in Sydney. That was last year. And funnily enough, she knew that there was a connection with her thyroid medication. So every time she had a doctor down in Sydney who was working with her, and her thyroid would crash when she wasn't on thyroid medication. So she'd go back on the thyroid medication, but then her breasts would get exceptionally tender. So she'd pull back on the thyroid medications, the breast would feel better again. She did that for several years, but she died of really nasty breast cancer. Now, the connection there, by the way, is that we need iodine for the breast tissue. So there's a very strong connection between low iodine levels in the body and breast cancer. And this is for men as well. And this is the thing, you know, women have 8 times more thyroid issues than men. So maybe that's part of the link as well. But breast tissue has a lot of iodine receptor sites. So when we are iodine deficient, we're more likely to end up with thyroid disorders and breast cancers as well. So it's one of the things that people could get checked out as the iodine levels in their body as well.
Well, yes, certainly it's played a part in a lot of people's lives over a lot of years. Now, is that maybe because it's always been happening, but now we're smart and we get more news alerts that these things are happening? Is that the reason why we're hearing more about breast cancer over the years? I
think we are definitely more toxic as a society these days.
Right.
You know, I think
back
that
down to the food and
that's right. Like even going back 30 years ago, we used something like 3 to 6 times less pesticides than what we use now. So we keep changing. We keep genetically changing foods so that they require more pesticides. So I don't know whether that's because of rotational farming, you know, using the same. We're not doing that, you know, planting wheat one time and then corn the next time and then soybeans the next time. We tend to use the same plot of land for the same over and over and over again, which means it's getting nutritionally depleted. So I think there's a lot of challenges going on for farmers these days. I think our water supplies as well, because they're fluorinated and chlorinated, those also add to thyroid disorders, because those two heavy metals bind to the tissue receptor sites in the thyroid, which makes them not uptake iodine, which then adds to the breast cancer as well. Wow. So, it's where, I paid $2,500 at the beginning of the year for a machine that takes the fluoride out of our water at the front of the house. So now I feel protected against that. So it's just one of those things. I think the more we can do, the better.
Well, that's it. You've got to be concerned about what you're putting in your body.
That's right.
Because it might taste fantastic.
Yes.
It might do what it's supposed to do for you. Yes. But you don't know what it's doing behind the scenes.
That's right. And even things really simple like broccoli. Organic if it's best. But broccoli, there's something in broccoli called DIM. It's a whole long name. But basically DIM is one of the things that helps to reverse toxic testosterone in men and toxic estrogen in women. Broccoli.
I love broccoli.
Broccoli is your friend.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I better go and buy some broccoli. Right, let's have a break. And, I know what I'm going to do for you this morning. I've got a song that you love dancing to.
Woo!
There you go. Because you were doing it on October 14th.
John Paul Young,
you've got it. You know this one. A long way to Pasadena.
Cool.
Bay FM Health Hour, 17 to 12.